Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sporting Kansas City Show on your home for SKC Soccer, Sports Radio 810 WHB. And of course, wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's on the Sports Radio 810 app, on the website, Google Play, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're streaming the video service as well. We always appreciate that. My name is Nate Bukaty, joined by Trost and Carter Augustine. Guys, Ali, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Just feeling, I think, the heaviness that everyone else is feeling going on in the world right now, but trying to use that feeling to learn more, reach out to people, stay educated on issues that affect our world today, and hopefully, we all come out on the other side better for it.
And Carter, how about yourself, man?
Yeah, well said, Ali. Just trying to get my head around everything that's going on, and as troubling as it is now, I do feel a little hopeful for the future, and I feel like we're part of a generation that really wants to make a big change and a big difference. So, happy to talk a little soccer and maybe get our minds off some stuff. But this is a pretty big moment in history.
There's no doubt about it. And I will lay out the menu for you all today on this Sporting Kansas City Show. We will talk some soccer. We will give you a little bit of escapism, so to speak, from maybe some of the other things that are happening in the world, because that, in the end, is what sports is usually supposed to be for us. It's supposed to be an outlet, an element of escapism. But I will also tell you that sports also play a fundamental role oftentimes in the history of our country, in social issues, and moments that really are watershed moments for the direction of our country. So we're not going to shy away from that today either. We're not going to ignore that aspect of things. So we will talk about what is going on in the world around us right now a little bit on the show today. But we will also talk some soccer and some happy memories. Paulo Nagamura is going to join us on the show in our next segment. He, of course, was maybe the most iconic figure from the first trophy that Sporting Kansas City won as Sporting Kansas City after the rebrand, that 2012 US Open Cup final. We are going to re-air that game with player commentary from Paulo Nagamura and Jimmy Nielsen on Saturday at 7 and 9 o'clock on Fox Sports Kansas City. So Paulo's been kind enough to come on and talk with us about that, but also as the head coach of Sporting Kansas City II, an update on what's going on at the USL level, because we're going to get into what's happening with MLS and how close they are or not coming back to playing. We'll give you the updates on that here as we're recording this show right now. Of course, that could all be changing as the minutes fly by here today. But how about what's going on at USL? That's important. That's important for the future of the sport in the United States and for Sporting Kansas City. So we'll get an update on that from Paulo Nagamura as well. And like I said, we'll talk about the latest in the labor negotiations between the Major League Soccer and Major League Soccer Players Association sides of things, hopefully getting really close to a return to play here. At least those of us on the outside are just crossing our fingers that this all gets worked out. But it has to start with what's going on in the world today on a social justice situation and that standpoint. We're all wearing a black shirt of some sort today. Today, you've probably seen across social media the hashtag Blackout Tuesday. I think all three of us have posted a picture in all black of that and taken down basically our activity on social media through the course of this. And you've seen teams post the same thing. Sporting Kansas City has done that as the protests have continued through the course of this week, as the United States is still trying to come to grips with a racial issue in this country that is deeply ingrained with the history of this country and is still a major issue in the history of this country. And to go to what Carter Augustine said, I think, look, we are three white people here doing this show today. I believe it is on us, and I've been told by many of our friends, it is on us to help instigate change as much as anyone else, maybe more than anyone else, to acknowledge what's going on in this world, to acknowledge the fears and concerns and grievances of people who feel like they have not been treated as equal humans in their lives, and to address those issues as much as we can. It's not on us to tell other people how to feel. It's on us to listen to other people and understand as best we can how they feel and see what we can do from there. And I will give each of you the floor to state something on that. I'm not trying to turn this into a big soapbox grandstanding moment. And I am going to get into the world of soccer and how it relates to all this, because it has been at the center of this in many ways. But Allie, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you. And any thoughts that you have on what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, Nate, you and the Border Patrol crew have done a great job in balancing important discussions with sports talk. I know that having a platform is sometimes a hard thing right now with what exactly to say. I actually talked to our old friend Kellen Rowe about that. We had a great conversation about having a platform, just, although it might be small, still having one and using it for what you believe in and not being afraid of what others might think, because you are speaking out for what's right and what is something that frankly has been going on for far too long. Kyrie Shelton posted something this week that moved me to tears, and I texted him after and just told him, hey, thank you for sharing your experiences, sharing what it's like for you being a Black man in America. And I just wanted him to know, like, hey, I'm with you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. And I think that while it's been emotional, I can't even imagine or fathom what it would be like having a sibling or a husband, a spouse or someone of color who I was worried about being up against some of those things that so many others have to think about and raise their children to think about on a daily basis. So I think that for me, sports has always been such a great way to bring so many different people together. And I'm grateful to work in a field where we get to meet and engage in conversations, tell stories of people from all walks of life. And that is something that I think sports not happening right now, it's almost a good thing, because you can't shy away from what's happening. There's no distractions, and we have to face it all head on. And again, long overdue, but just go to so many different pages of, the people of color in your community, your friends, the athletes that you love and follow. A lot of them have been sharing their stories, and they're really important reads and really important to get that perspective from people in our community.
Yeah. For me, soccer has been such a big part of my life. And in terms of opening my mind, it's been a huge part of my life as well. I had the great pleasure to, growing up, go to a high school with a lot of diversity, and our soccer team was a great example of that. And we had a slogan, many nations, one team. I think when I was a senior, we had 2 American-born players that started. The rest were from all over the world. And I was blessed that as Ali just mentioned, sports were a way for me to grow as a person and to develop a lot of empathy and compassion for people that might not have the same circumstances as me, and especially people that aren't white and don't have white privilege as something that they can fall back on. I would also echo the fact that for me, at least in this time, one thing I think that people can do is read what people are going through. Get out there and find, as Ali just mentioned, there's a lot of soccer players. I mean, this is a soccer show, so we can stick to that. Jeremy Abobasi had a really fantastic piece that everyone should read. Derek Etienne just tweeted out that he underwent some racism just in the past couple of days. He's getting pulled over for stuff that a white person would never get pulled over for. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest things is, there's just, you can't really understand what Black people of color are going through in this country. And it's been for far too long that it's been, as Martin Luther King referred to, a negative peace. It's an absence of tension as opposed to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice for all. So, he talked about the biggest enemy wasn't necessarily the enemy of freedom. It wasn't necessarily a guy in the Ku Klux Klan, because that's just a person of ill will. It's as he said, the shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than the absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. And Nick Wright shared that quote. It's a fantastic quote, I think, from Martin Luther King. Just saying that you just because it's not comfortable for you doesn't mean other people aren't going through this. And it's about time we made a change in that direction.
And just to add one more thing on what Carter said, and I talked about this on my show last weekend, whenever I feel uncomfortable or I feel, just confused about what's going on, knowledge is power. Educate yourself on what's going on in the world. If you don't understand, if you feel, lean into those, whatever you're feeling, and try to learn as much as you can. And whether that learning comes from history books or, finding the different resources that you can read, watch, and listen to, or whether that resource is a good conversation with a colleague, a friend of color, whatever you can do to better understand, I think is what the message right now is all about. It's listening, it's understanding, then it's finding out how to act and do what you can in the color community.
And it's about, I think, also not being afraid to have a difficult conversation and an uncomfortable conversation. Sometimes I reached out to a lot of people that I hadn't talked to in a long time. And I thought, man, I don't know how this is going to be received. This might be like, hey, why are you reaching out to me now all of a sudden when you haven't for the past several years? And I think maybe some of the people I reached out to did feel that way when I did, but we ended up having some good conversations. And I think that's where it starts a lot of times, is trying to understand somebody on a human level. And to bring it back to the Sporting Kansas City show and the sport of soccer, I think this reminds me, when we talk about the COVID situation, I hear a lot of times people refer to it as a national crisis. And it makes me shake my head, because it is not a national crisis. It is a global crisis. The COVID virus does not discriminate on Americans or people from China. We're going to talk with Paulo Nagamura about it. It is crushing the continent of South America now. It is a global pandemic. And I think if any sport has illustrated to us that racism is a global plague, it is the sport of soccer. We have been dealing with racism in the sport of soccer for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been a fan of the sport, and it continues to this day. This season alone in Europe, we have had players who have wanted to walk off of the field because of racial abuse that they have suffered while doing their job on the field. And I do believe that for most of us in the white community, we have failed. We might have outrage in those things, but we have failed to fully grasp the weight that carries on a person's life when they live with that constantly. I think sometimes we have the idea in our head that, oh, he just, he's out there on a soccer field for 90 minutes and he got a few verbal, barbs thrown at him, and it's a little temporary thing. That's a constant thing that person has to live with. And it's like that old metaphor of you hold a sack of flour that weighs 5 pounds for 5 minutes and it's kind of heavy. Carry that around your entire life and it's exhausting. Yeah. And that is the message you're hearing from a lot of people right now. And so to the point of soccer, you're seeing protests right now about what's happening in America around the world. Because yes, it is a uniquely American problem in many ways. I'm not here to dismiss that. American history is littered with racial problems. It's built on it in many ways. But it is also one of the things that keeps reminding me is when we watch the German Bundesliga and Jadon Sancho comes out and he, after having his hat trick, pulls off his shirt and it says "Justice for George Floyd" on it. When Weston McKennie's wearing an armband, a lot of that's about what's happening in America, but it's also about what's happening to players in Europe when they play soccer games today, this season, and sometimes allowed to go on without not nearly the punishment that needs to happen. And so this is, again, something that all of us need to be aware of. And I believe that the world of sports, because we're talking about people that have such a high profile, that are heroes to many, have a voice that they can use. And I'm glad that they're using it. And I'm hoping that more people listen to that voice as it comes out, because the whole concept of shut up and stick to sports, I hope that right now this just stops that comment, because that is a tired thing to tell a human being who has real feelings and real life experiences that they want to share with the world.
And it also, and I mean, if you're just kind of painting, drawing out those words and dissecting what they mean, it's basically saying what you do as a job is more important than the lives of other people, and more important than racial equality and issues in our world and in our community that are hurting a sector of people that are part of, like, we're all on this earth for a short amount of time. And I think it is a disservice to each and every one of us if we go through our lives here on earth not loving, respecting, and living as equals here. It's gone on long enough. And Nate, you bring up all of the racial issues that have happened in European soccer. I mean, I remember reading articles and being so angry in the moment, maybe sending out a tweet expressing my thoughts on social media, but then that's it. And I think if there's one thing that I personally regret and something that I've learned, it's that I don't want to be a social media warrior. I want to make actual change and get out in the community and do something besides just saying that I'm against things, and finding ways to give back and to put my words into action. So that's something for me that I've spent a lot of time looking at how I can get involved even in my own small way.
Yeah, I hope I understand the anger that we're seeing in a lot of communities all across America, and as you guys said, all across the world. And I hope that, as Killer Mike said in his speech the other day, there are direct steps that we can take as people in all of our separate communities to go a step further from being outraged and to make lasting change in our communities. And I truly hope that that's the next step. And you're right, Ali, I'm trying as well to figure out a better way to be a part of that and to affect positive change in our communities. And hopefully this is a wake-up call for some people that might not have been aware of the stuff that people go through. I don't know. It's tough to, with all the examples that we've seen over the past couple of years. I mean, just past couple of months, even, it's tough to see how you could be. But hopefully this is it. And Nate, you talked about athletes being one way to maybe break through some of that, those barriers that people put up. I think Richard Sherman put out, it's good to see a lot of these big time white quarterbacks coming out and having these strong messages, because when it comes from them, it's different than when it comes from Richard Sherman to other people. So sports is, we've seen the analogy in a lot of these quarterbacks posts, but of sports opening all different types of people's eyes, because you're in a locker room with someone, you bond over a common goal, and you get to see that, as much different as we all are, we're all so similar. And hopefully in the end we all do have a common goal, and maybe this is the point where more people than not start realizing that we need to pull together. And one thing I meant to point out was CJ Sapong and Kai Kamara have posted an hour-long conversation they had on everything that's going on right now. And like I said, kind of at the start, CJ Sapong was saying, his heart is just broken right now, but he really feels that he's a part of a generation that can make a very, very big change. I highly recommend going to either of their social media and checking out this hour-long conversation, because it's fantastic. I think both of those guys are pretty thoughtful individuals, and I really learned a lot from it. And I totally agree with CJ Sapong's sentiments there that we can make a difference.
If we don't have hope, I don't know what we have to hold on to. So we got to hope that we can make things better, but hope enough. We got to act on that. And for me personally, I'm also going to say this. I think for those of us that have families that have a household, you have to start in your home. You have to have these conversations with your kids. And more importantly, and I'm saying this to myself, I'm looking in the mirror as I'm saying this. I'm not trying to lecture anybody else.
Yeah.
We got to live our lives in a way that our children see the way it's supposed to be done, and that we can do better, because our kids are our mirrors, and they're taking cues not just from the lectures we give them when we sit down and talk to them. They're watching the way we live our lives and the way we treat people, the way we understand other people. And so that is a very important part to it too. And I would say about CJ and Kai too, they're part of our Sporting Kansas City family.
Yeah.
They are ingrained in the history of this club. They mean something to us, and as humans and as members of this club's history. So you should go watch it anyway.
Yeah.
But it takes on an even more personal level there. I'll tell you what. On that note, let's go ahead and break, because we're going to have Paulo Nagamura on the show next. We're going to talk soccer with him. We're going to talk USL. We're going to talk about the 2012 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup Championship that he was a major part of winning for Sporting Kansas City. Then after that, we'll talk about the latest with the MLS and their attempts to get back on the field. MLS put out a statement this week as well. Sporting Kansas City did as well about the current situation that we're in right now. You can go to their social media pages and see those as well. But we'll talk about the actual efforts of getting on the field and playing again. That's all coming up straight ahead on the Sporting Kansas City Show. And we're back with the Sporting Kansas City Show on your home for SKC Soccer, Sports Radio 810 WHB, and, of course, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you stream your video content. Myself, Ali Trost, Carter Augustine, now joined by former Sporting Kansas City star and current SKC II head coach, manager, Paulo Nagamura. Paulo, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you, Nate, Ali, Carter? Pleasure, guy, to be with you guys here.
It is good. It's good to talk to you. I think we're all doing well relative to the current state of affairs in the world, which are pretty interesting right now on many different levels. And on one of those maybe much smaller levels compared to what's happening these days is the world of soccer and trying to get back to playing games. Germany got back. We've been watching them for a couple of weeks. England is about to start going here in the middle of this month, from what we understand. We talked about it earlier in the show, but the reports out today are that Major League Players Association are voting. They're trying to figure that situation out with Major League Soccer. And, of course, USL is in the mix as well. Maybe, we focus so much on what's going on the Major League Soccer level. Tell us, maybe give us an update on what's been going on with you guys with Sporting KC II and the USL.
Yeah, we are in kind of the same level that MLS is right now. We are allowed to have a small group training, individual training. So we just moved to small group trainings. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2-3 weeks. We're trying to keep the players fit and healthy. But at the same time, just waiting from USL to have some news on whether we're gonna have a league or if when we're gonna start, when can we have more competitive matches. So at this point right now, we're just trying to keep the players in shape, healthy, and waiting for the notice.
How's it been trying to keep everyone in shape? I know we've talked with a lot of the Sporting Kansas City and MLS players about their challenges that they've had to overcome with staying 90 minutes fit. What are some of the challenges your players have experienced?
It's challenging because we're training without knowing where the next game is going to be. So it's difficult on the players to keep them motivated and keep them focused and keep them going. And we understand that. So we're trying to make some more fun sessions, some more sessions that players are not only working the technical part of the game, but also they're not mentally drained and enjoying themselves when they come to training ground. So I think this part is been good, and hopefully we can have a good news soon, whether we're gonna play or what we're gonna do.
How about for yourself, Paulo? Still, relatively young in your coaching career. I know we talked to Peter Ramirez a couple of times. He watched every single game in the first 2 weeks of MLS in this off period. Has there been some stuff that you've been able to work on in this time that maybe you wouldn't have if it would have been a normal regular season?
Yes. Besides working a lot of my backyard here that my wife made me work on backyard. No, yes, we had plenty of time to watch different teams, different playing styles, work on some stuff that I want to implement with SKC II as well. So definitely the time that we spent at home, being isolated from everyone, it was a plus, and definitely got me more prepared to go through this year, even though we're going for a very tough situation.
How's the backyard look?
Yeah.
Great. Is ready for Brazilian barbecue. I'm telling you that.
Oh boy, can we? What do we have to do to get an invite to that once we're allowed to hang out together again?
Anytime, guys. Anytime you can come and join for a Brazilian picanha, and I think you guys are gonna love it.
I might literally invite myself to this barbecue. I don't care if that's rude. I want to try this. That sounds amazing. We're visiting with Paulo Nagamura, and to remind everybody, the reason we're doing this right now is because coming up this weekend on Saturday, 7 o'clock, and then again at 9 o'clock, we're going to rerun the 2012 U.S. Open Cup final, the famous match where Paulo got the 6 or 5 stitches below the eye and hit the game-winning penalty, the first trophy as Sporting Kansas City as a franchise. And we're going to watch that one back with Paulo and Jimmy Nielsen. That's going to be really fun this weekend. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to stick on what we're talking about right now, Paulo, in terms of what holding pattern everybody's in right now, and particularly for you with SKC II, because you're in charge of young players who are at a very important part of their development as a soccer player. You have a very important job for the future of the franchise, because this in many ways is what they hope to be the lifeblood of the talent that will be coming through Sporting Kansas City for years to come. And a huge step in that process is their development under your tutelage. And they're missing those opportunities to play games right now. And everything we hear from, we talked to Benny Feilhaber, he said the most important thing you can do as a young player is get games. You can't give them games right now. So how big of a challenge is that to help not make this time go to waste? And how do you help young players develop when you don't have the opportunity to get them out there and play games against other teams?
Absolutely, Nate. I think it's like you said, we have to make most of this time right now, and unfortunately, we cannot get games. So what we're trying to do is really trying to develop and improve those players' technical ability, tactical ability, physical ability. Even though we're now playing competitive matches, I wouldn't say this is a waste of time. But I say that we definitely focus in a different of a part of the game that we wouldn't if we're playing competitive games every weekend. But yes, I agree with you. Those young players need games. They need to be playing competitive games, and hopefully, I really hope that on the near future we can get this sorted out, and those young players are playing official competitive games.
In addition to the on the field stuff, what about the mental side of this? I know that there are a lot of frustrations people are feeling right now, maybe some uneasiness with not getting those games in, like Nate said. How are you talking with the players? What are some of the conversations you've been having to kind of ease the anxieties that some players might be feeling with the mental side?
I think we have a very good group of players that understand what's going on in the world right now. So they understand that we have to be cautious, we have to be safe, and at the same time we have to work and put the work in a line and try to make ourselves better with the situations that we have right now. So with that aspect, I think they understand that, but at the same time, they're soccer players. They want to play. They want to get on the field. They want to beat another opponent. They want to score goals. They want to be around the fans. So it's a balance that we're trying to manage right now. But I think our coaching staff are doing a tremendous job with that, because it's, like I say, it's a difficult situation, but I think we're trying to make most of it.
You've been around the world in your playing career and now coaching career. Is there anything that you can draw parallels to try and help these young players in this time?
Look, it's a very, like I said before, it's a very difficult situation. It's probably something that I never leave in my lifetime. But what I can relate to soccer is that soccer is a path, is a career that you have to go through ups and downs, and this is definitely a down that you have to go through. And if you can come strong, if you can get out of this, you get much stronger. So I could relate to that on that aspect. We all gonna get stronger from this, and hopefully we're gonna be no better human beings, no better soccer players, but as a whole, we're gonna be a much better world to live in.
That's good stuff from Paulo Nagamura. And Paulo, this one of the crises we're dealing with right now is the pandemic, and that's what's led to the issues we're talking about right now. And lately in the news, what we've been seeing a lot is the outbreak has really started to hit the South American continent pretty hard. Obviously, you being originally from Brazil, I'm curious, do you have any friends or family members that you've had to deal with back home that you've talked to, and how are they doing? What's the situation like for you, for people back in Brazil right now?
Yeah, Brazil, it's struggling a little bit now. I think if I'm not wrong, they're the second country in numbers of cases and numbers of deaths. So unfortunately, we are not, we as a country in Brazil are not in a good place. I don't think we took the right approach when the outbreak came, and that resulted in a lot of cases now, especially in my hometown, São Paulo. Fortunately for me, all my family members, all my friends are doing okay, are doing fine, are healthy and safe. But I really would hope that that number wasn't that high like it is right now.
So
Well,
glad
certainly. Yeah, go ahead, Ali.
your family's doing well, and this is something we've talked with a lot of people about, a little bit more on the lighthearted side. You said you've been doing a lot of yard work. Have you been binge watching anything while in quarantine? And I know you said you've been busy coaching, but what else have you been doing to occupy your free time?
Well, since kids are not in school are officially done now. I did a lot of online classes with my daughters, but now we spend a lot of time at home, even more with the kids on the backyards when I'm not working in the backyard. But when I have free time, I'm always with them. As I said before, we already came back to practice, so I have my mornings and almost half of my day with the guys there at school. But when I get back home, it's straight to family time and playing time with my girls.
So are your girls into soccer? Do they want to kick the ball around with that at all?
My oldest, Clara, she is.
Yeah.
She loves it. She was just asking me to register her to some soccer camps. I just hope that the camps are back in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like some of them are starting to open up again, so I hope that works out for them. Again, we're visiting with Paulo Nagamura. All right, let's transition, Paulo, to a happier time, to a time when Sporting Kansas City were looking for their first trophy. Again, if you want to watch on Saturday night, 7 o'clock, and then again at 9 o'clock on Fox Sports Kansas City, we're going to do the player commentary of the famous 2012 US Open Cup. Paulo Nagamura and Jimmy Nielsen are going to watch the game back with me. I know Jimmy told a phenomenal story with Carter on a For the Cheers episode that we did on sportingkc.com a couple weeks ago about that penalty shootout. If you missed it, listen to the broadcast because he's going to tell that story again. Paulo's going to tell some amazing stories about the stitches and what Julio Cesar had to say to him. We don't want to say it now, Paulo, because I want people to tune in and watch on Saturday, but it's a great story about what happened when he split his face open in the game. But let's talk a little bit about your memories of the game and leading up to it. And maybe just first of all, that being your first year with this club and having come from a club that is not well remembered in the league in so many ways to a club that had good leadership and was ready to win. What was that process like for you coming to Sporting Kansas City?
I think I already told this story to you guys. And when I got traded from Chivas USA to Sporting Kansas City, my first reaction was, what the heck am I going to do in Kansas City? Sorry for the words. But it was the best decision that I made in my career. I think I was coming from a great organization that had everything thought out and one of the top ones in MLS for sure. Like I said before, and I mentioned in the broadcast, and you guys are gonna hear, probably this game, the Open Cup final, is a game that changed the way people will see Sporting Kansas City. From that moment on, I think Sporting Kansas City became a totally different club, a club that when you remember trophies and winning, and coming from Chivas to Sporting Kansas City, I could not ask for a better change of scenery, a better change of a club, because what we have here in Kansas City, the passion of the fans, the organization, the structure, the owners that we have in the club, it all fits really, really well. And I think what we have here is really, really special.
Paulo, being a part of the coaching staff now, how important, and I just guess how cool is it being able to look back and being part of such a big moment in the history of the club, even just, however many years later in your career?
It's great because I think we have our parts in terms of what we achieve as a club, and one of the reasons why I accepted this role as a coach with the second team of Sporting Kansas City is that I could pass my experiences to the young players, right? We want these young players all to succeed and become future stars for their home teams here, especially in Kansas City, playing for Sport Kansas City, and to have staff members, coaches that experience those winning moments, those special moments with the club, and can transfer that to their youth players, to their young teams or young talent. I think it's great, and it's gonna only make all those players not only appreciative, but better to understand what it takes to be a Sporting Kansas City player.
Since that was your first season, I'm curious, when did you get a sense of that this was going to be the year that you guys were going to win a trophy, and maybe that this was such a good team that would go on to win several trophies in the next couple of years? When did you kind of get that sense from that team that you joined?
I don't think we had that sense in the beginning. I think we start gaining confidence after we won the Whopping Cup. We knew that we had a great group of players, great group of experienced players with a mixture of a very good young talent in that squad. So we knew we had a good package to make a run. So once we won the first trophy, I think that gave us confidence, not only for the players but the coaching staff and the entire organization to feel like we are good. We can do something special. And I think that showed in the following year with the MLS Cup trophy, and the following years right after that with another 2 trophies. So you don't when you're a player, you don't want to be overconfident and say, yeah, we are good, we are gonna win anytime. But we had a good sense, a good feeling that what we had in that locker room could have taken, I'd say, glory, but to success.
Well, glory was certainly the word that was used, I believe, even on the sign in that famous picture, right? Isn't that the picture from 2012 with you guys all walking towards the big tifo? I believe it says "For the Glory of the City," right, Carter? I'm thinking of the right one, aren't I? So you did. Paulo Nagamura is our guest. Now, Paulo, this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but I want to ask it. Peter Vermes clearly he holds you in a very high regard as a soccer person, as an individual, as a player. He has spoken to all of us many times about why that is and what you stand for that he values so much. But I'm curious, and when we see it, he wouldn't pick someone to be coaching the Sporting Kansas City II team if they didn't have those values. But for you, if you were to describe it, what do you think it is that you contributed to that 2012 team and helping this organization get back to winning a trophy?
I think something that it's tough to analyze yourself and
right.
and say what brought you here or what took you there or blah blah blah, right? But I think one thing that I know that I always did throughout my career, whether I play at Chivas or LA Galaxy or in Mexico or back in Brazil. I was the kind of person that when I commit to something, I always give 100%. I always give everything that I have until my time is over in that place. So I think if I'd say that, look, I was never the most technical player. I was never, and I say that in a game, I was never the most physical. I was never the most whatever. But one thing that I always look back when I was a player, I say I'll never back down from a fight, and I'll give 100% that I had until I'm done with the club. And until I'm here with SKC, I'm gonna do 100% as a player, as a coach, to help this club make it the next step.
Paulo, I want to stick with the Peter Vermes topic, and you started with the club early on in his coaching career. How have you assessed his progress as a coach from the early stages to where he is now and the way that he's grown the Sporting Kansas City club over the years?
I think a lot as well. I think, look, it's when you're a player, you don't pay too much attention to that, right? You have your leader, and you want to believe that he knows what he's doing. His and coaching staff they know what they're doing, and we have to respect, right? He's a coach, and you're a player. You do this. He's asking you to do that. So you have that respect between coach and player. But even me spending most of my time until now as a player, not as a coach, I think he has achieved some great things in his time with Sporting Kansas City, and it's not by mistake, okay? And I can say that because I moved from player to coaching, and I got to know him much more closely and much better, and to see him work on daily basis, it shows a lot, and why he had so many wins and so much success throughout his coaching career. So again, it's I don't think it's fair for me to be here and be judging what he has done better or how he's improved. But what I can say is that once you get to work closer to him, you understand why the guy is so successful and he's a winner.
Have you taken much from him during your time as a player and as a coach? And are there other coaches throughout your career that you maybe look back at and have stored in the back of your memory for this now, your coaching career?
Absolutely. I think first of all, as a coach, it's all about experiences, right? You have your way of seeing how you want to be, how you want to play, or how you want to defend, how you want to attack, all those little things, and that's what makes you have your coaching style. You pick things from different coaches that work on you in the past and try to implement on daily basis. And absolutely, from what I know nowadays, I have a lot of experience just because I play under Peter, right? And now I'm coaching a team that he's the head coach, he's the manager, and we look up to him to do the things that we want to do at Sporting Kansas City too. So absolutely, he has a big influence in not only me as a coaching, but the way that I do things on a daily basis.
Paulo Nagamura has been our guest, and Paulo, we really appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to watching this U.S. Open Cup. We've already recorded it, me, Paulo, and Jimmy Nielsen. I'm going to tell you folks, you'll want to watch because they tell some great stories. It's a lot of fun. And before we let you go, Paulo, I guess I'll just ask you this. Maybe what's one memory, just one thing that really stands out to you that makes you smile the most when you think back to that cup in 2012?
There's two. I always, when I see it, I'm getting my face open. It makes me laugh because that instant right there create a lot of stories. but definitely the moment that I really like to watch it is when Eddie Johnson skies his PK out of bounds and up in the air, and we became champions of Open Cup in 2012. So definitely great memory. A game again that it changed the path of what Sporting KC City is right now. And if you didn't watch it, go and watch it, because it's a great game.
And you'll get to see what Paulo Nagamura yelled at Eddie Johnson right before his penalty, and what Jimmy Nielsen yelled at him as well. So that's something to watch for also. Paulo, thank you so much for the time. We're glad everybody and your family's doing well down in Brazil as well. And hopefully next time we talk to you, we're getting back to soccer. Okay, man?
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate it to be with you guys here and talk about this great memory that we have as a Sporting KC fan.
Saturday night, 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock on Fox Sports Kansas City, the 2012 U.S. Open Cup final over Seattle. We'll take a break and wrap things up on the Sporting KC show right after this. And we're back to wrap things up on this edition of the Sporting Kansas City show. Our thanks to Paulo Nagamura for joining us. Again, remember, Fox Sports Kansas City on Saturday night, 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. If you want to rewatch the 2012 U.S. Open Cup with Naga and Jimmy Nielsen on the player commentary for that one. Now, we're hoping that pretty soon we're actually getting back to calling live soccer matches down in Orlando, Florida. Maybe that's obviously the plan that's being discussed back and forth, and we are getting to almost literally the 11th hour on these negotiations. There's been a lot of reporting back and forth between Major League Players Association and Major League Soccer, but those are all coming from outside sources. Neither side's really talking publicly right now. I'm going to read you some tweets, most recently from Herculez Gomez. He is a former MLS player, of course, former Kansas City guy briefly, and with ESPN now, and he has had a lot of information. It stands to reason he's talking to players that are still in the league. He knows those guys. But this is what he tweeted. We're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. He tweeted this about an hour ago from the time we're recording this. Quote, after a 2-hour deliberation, the MLSPA will now have a vote on whether or not they will return to play or be locked out. He followed up with a tweet that said, Orlando plan stays as is, though no return to market plan from MLS was included. And then he followed up that by saying later tonight, the players will vote within their individual markets and decision could or should be forthcoming. MLS owners gave them until Wednesday at 12 p.m. to decide. I assume that's 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's the timetables that we've been had on most of these things. So at one point it looked like there was a deadline of noon today. Now it's 24 hours later. According to the reports we read and the way I see it, both sides seem close. They seem close. I'm not here to take a side on which side should budge a little bit to get to bridge that final gap. But I've seen some people express optimism that they will bridge that gap. When you're this close at this late of an hour, that seems to me to be two sides that want to get something done. And I'm going to hold out hope that is something that gets done that both sides like. Ali, I don't know what your thoughts have been over kind of what's transpired over the last couple of days there.
Yeah, well, lots of reports for one, right? I really do feel like this is something that it is really just as by the hour as we are getting it in forms of tweets or reports from ESPN and The Athletic and other sources. But I think the fact that they pushed the deadline back to Wednesday also shows that both sides really do want to avoid a lockout if possible. I think that, to me, that was a positive sign and something that showed the commitment from both sides to get to return to play. From my understanding, really the hang up right now, if I am reading the reports correctly, is just the debate on the force majeure clause. I'm not going to pretend that I can look at this from the perspective of a player and all of the things they have to consider. My hope is that both sides are able to come to that agreement. Sounds close. I feel confident that they'll get there. But just hoping that, both sides are taken care of in the process. I think if there's one thing we've learned and we can all agree upon, the way that Major League Baseball as a whole has handled the return to play situation has not fared well in terms of how fans are receiving it, the Royals did a fantastic job in their efforts to make the lives of their franchise as normal as possible, from the minor leagues all the way up to the majors. But as for Major League Soccer, a lot to figure out, and we'll just see what happens. I know that sounds kind of like a just kind of wait and see response, but I really do think that they'll get there. It's just, we'll see it at noon tomorrow or 11.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that it's trending positive. There's a lot at stake here. I think this would be an awful time for a lockout, when it could be a pretty good time for MLS to try and gain some popularity and have the eyes of the nation on them. So I'm hoping that they see to it. And I would just say that people should remember that MLS players don't make as much as players in other leagues do, especially MLB and football and basketball. So these are normal guys, a lot of them, and I just want people to keep that in the back of their minds as they might head down to Orlando or whatever situation may come. Yeah, but I'm hopeful now that with as you guys have said, the reports being a little more optimistic. So let's get some soccer going.
Let's get some soccer going. And like you said, a lot of people have been like, oh, this is just a fight between billionaires and millionaires. But Carter, to your point, in Major League Soccer, that is absolutely not the case. Their home life situations, financial situations are much different than the majority of NBA, MLB, NFL, and other, players of different organizations. So, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind for people watching.
And one update, Sam Stage call to that force majeure, which is a term that I don't know about you guys. I didn't know what that was. I had to have some people explain that to me. But when we're learning stuff through pandemics and negotiations right now. But Sam Stage call reported earlier today that the MLS has revised its return to play plan, amending that force majeure media sharing proposals as well. So did they amend it enough for the players to say, yep, that's good, we're ready to go? Time will tell. We'll find out hopefully later tonight or tomorrow morning. And like you said, hopefully it means we're getting back to playing soccer. One thing I would also wrap up by pointing out, we started off by talking about recognizing our collective humanity and everybody's perspective on things. Some players, it's been reported, will not be going to this competition because of family situations, because of healthcare type situations that they've got to worry about when it comes to the COVID crisis. And that, from what's been reported, has been written into this agreement. So I just want to put that out there in case we see some star players or players that people want to see out there. Why isn't this guy out there playing? Let's try to remember that every person out there has unique circumstances that they have to deal with on a human level, and be understanding of that and respectful of that and appreciative of whatever it is we get to watch, if and when we get to watch it. So that's the last little soapbox that I will get on for today. For Ali Trost and for Carter Augustine, unless there's anything else, guys, I don't want to, if there's any other points you want to make, I don't want to cut you off before we go.
Choking out of nowhere, and I was like trying to finish the show, but Nate, take it away.
Carter, you got anything before I let everybody go?
Nate, I thought you closed out the first segment with a pretty poignant topic about, your kids being a mirror of who you are, and it's every little thing that you do. And I just would say that throughout this whole last week, something that's kind of come to focus for me a lot is, that rings true for all of us, even us without kids, and how you treat people on a day-to-day basis and every interaction that you have. And the one thing that's come out, and a lot of athletes have shared their stories, which have made this even more clear to me. As a man, a lot of people are unaware that, girls will walk home or walk to their cars or walk home with their keys in their fingers, right? Because that's the world we live in. And likewise, the world that we live in is, the video of that black man being protected by his grandma on his front lawn because he had rolled through a stop sign. That just wouldn't happen to a white person. And I think it's important for people to remember how you treat people on a day-to-day basis. We're in a world where, as these black men are saying, they are conscious of how the world perceives them so as to not be a threat because for them, the threat can lead to the police being called, and we know what the worst outcome is for Black people when that happens. So I just wanted to maybe expound on that point that you made. I really liked it, and I think it can be applied to everyone and how they treat every single person day to day.
Absolutely.
Very well said, Carter. And on that note, we will wrap it up. We will see you next week, hopefully getting ready to talk about a competition that Major League Soccer will be embarking on at that time. For Ali, Trost, for Carter Augustine, for Paulo Nagamura, this is Nate Bukaty saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Sporting Kansas City Show.